a good amount set aside. And as your earnings increase, you increase how much you save. But the point is to get started, even if it's $5 a week.
Is it in a bank account? Is it like you just stash it in a checking account, and then is it a different type of account? Where do you put it?
No, you don't put it in a savings account or a checking account.
Welcome to the Business Owner Spotlight by AudateMedia. In this interview show, you will learn how to succeed through other people's stories, challenges that they overcame, and how they are winning in this new economy. You'll learn what to do in your business, what not to do in your business, and how others are succeeding. Tune in every week to discover new stories, new businesses, and new ideas.
Welcome to the Business Owner Spotlight. Today, I have a special guest, Richard Harrell, man. Richard, thanks so much for being on the show, man.
Thank you, Andy. It's my pleasure.
So, one of the things that I share is that the opportunity is in the show up.
Yeah.
And the one thing I like about you, so you had the option to do this. We could have done it via Zoom.
Right.
Or we could have done it in person. And you're based out of California. I'm in Las Vegas.
Right.
What inspired you to say, hey, look, I'm going to show up and I'm going to come into the office and in the studio?
Well, it makes sense to me to come in and be with you. Because if we do it in Zoom, I don't get to spend time with you face to face.
Right.
And there's always that business of it hangs up or it lags.
Yeah, right.
You get all of that kind of technical stuff. So I wanted to eliminate all of that and then maximize my time with you.
All right, also, I'm glad to have you here in the studio. So Richard, share with us a little bit about, your message and what you do in your business.
Yeah, my business is helping people plan for retirement. And the reason I'm doing it is because 50% of baby boomers are afraid they'll run out of money before they die. Mm-hmm. Now stop and think about that. There's 72 million baby boomers. That's 36 million people who are afraid they'll run out of money before they die.
What age group is the baby boomers at?
Right now it's from 57 to 75.
57 years old to 75 years old. Okay,
right.
Gotcha.
It's that 18-year span. 1946 to 1964 was when they were all born.
Okay.
So for whatever reason, half of them think they're going to run out of money before they die.
Oh my gosh.
But if you read in the financial pages, there's $62 trillion that needs to be rolled over. They call it the greatest transfer of wealth in world history.
62 trillion?
62 trillion.
When you say rolled over, is it passed on to another generation?
It's in IRAs and 401ks.
Okay,
IRAs, individual.
IRAs, okay, got it.
Yeah, individual retirement account and 401ks. When a person hits retirement age, the government smiles and says, you need to take a minimum required distribution. And every time you do that, it gets taxed. So the government has every reason for you to take it out because every time you do, they get tax on it. So they're happy with $62 trillion of taxable money that's going to change hands. But in order to get it, it has to come out of those accounts and then go into a regular checking account, savings account, whatever you want to put it into. So if there's $62 trillion to change hands, why is it that there's 36 million people that think they're going to run out of money?
What is the average? Is it a smaller group that has a larger portion of the 62 trillion, or is it? Why would people have that thought process?
Well, it has to be a smaller. Well, let me just round it down to 50% have the money, but they don't all have the same amount, and 50% don't. Before the pandemic, you used to go into McDonald's, and who would you see as the servers? They were retirees. Now, when I was in college, you go into McDonald's, everybody in there was 18, yeah. Not anymore. They're 65, 66, 67.
What do you think that is? Like the workforce, the retirees are back into the workforce now.
They need the cash flow in order to pay their bills.
And crazy. And the jobs that they're getting are the jobs that are, $9, $10, $15 an hour.
Right. They're taking entry-level jobs because whatever they did before, they can't do now because of some kind of contract issue where there's a mandatory retirement. Okay. Other jobs, it's physically impossible to do once you get to a certain age.
Yeah.
If you've got the training, you can go into IT, you can have a job, it's no stress, you just work as long as you want. But if you're 65 and you don't have the training, you don't have time to get trained enough to be competitive. So if you're going to make money, what do? You look at the entry-level jobs.
So what is the solution to put the retirees in a position of thriving financially up until death?
Right now, the solution is they have to look to their children. Because there are no jobs that will pay them enough to build up savings. They're living hand to mouth, month to month, paycheck to paycheck. That's the tough reality of it. So, unfortunately, they'll be relying on their kids, who, if they paid attention to mom and dad, will be doing the same thing.
I was reading a book, The Millionaire Next Door. And in this book, it's about a study of millionaires. I don't know how many it was, but it's a study of millionaires. And it talks about the idea of transferring wealth to most Americans isn't realistic, that the children are, I forgot, they use this term EOC, economic outcare, whatever the word is, EOC, where they're dependent on the parents.
Right.
And then it comes to a point where the kid has their own financial independence up to a point of being able to take care of themselves. That could be when they're 35, 40, whatever. And then when time passes and the parents now don't have enough savings, they're now dependent on the kids.
Right.
So it's this like loop, instead of transferring wealth between generations, is this loop of dependency on whoever can work, and they're just making enough, generation over generation over generation.
Right. And there are some reasons for that. Now, the greatest generation, as Tom Brokaw called the parents of the baby boomers, they had a retirement situation that was better than what baby boomers have. They had Social Security, they had pensions, and then they had savings. But the baby boomers started retiring after pensions were done away with. All of the pensions were outsourced to another company. No big corporation wanted to have a pension because
it's not attractive
a huge
anymore.
drain.
It's not attractive anymore.
No, it isn't,
companies.
because it take them down to bankruptcy.
Yeah.
So they got rid of it. Well, that means that everybody who's still working no longer has a pension.
Right.
So that's one leg of the three-legged stool. It doesn't work anymore. Personal savings. Baby boomers are not known for saving. It's a sad fact. So they can't rely on that. So that leaves Social Security, which was never designed to support somebody. It was designed to assist. And that's all it is an assistance. So like my mother, she had Social Security, but she also had my dad's Teamster's pension, and she had her personal savings.
All of that combined is what she used.
That's what she used, and she still had to live frugally because she wasn't wealthy. But somebody who doesn't have two of those three is really having a tough time, and that's what half the baby boomers are facing. So how do we deal with that? Let's hope that their kids are doing well enough they can support the parents. Unfortunately, there may be tension between the parents and the kids. There's no help there.
Gotcha, yeah.
So how do we solve that? We actually have to work against human nature. When I was in my 20s and 30s, I was invincible.
Yeah.
I had illusions of invincibility. I had a couple of friends who died in violent circumstances the year after high school. And I was really sad when I lost them. But that was them, not me. And all of my friends felt the same way. It was really sad Rick died in a car wreck. But hey, we're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Street race, try to beat the train at the tracks, all of that. Nope, not a problem. And that, of course, is a fallacy. But that's what we believe until we're about 30. And then something happens. We begin to realize that, maybe something could go wrong. But now we're married and starting families, and the thought of the future is taken up with pregnancy and babies and trying to get enough money together to make ends meet. Until we get into our 50s, when we realize, I need some life insurance. I need to have some savings. But the reality is, nobody who is not already wealthy makes enough money to save for retirement starting from their 50s.
Yeah.
In order to have a good retirement, you have to start in your 20s.
Yeah, but let's talk about this, man. I was talking to my fiance earlier, and actually today when we talked about this, and we joked. And the joke was because she was sharing with me that her sister just recently reached out to her and said, hey, I'm interested to talk about credit. I'm interested to talk about credit. And then we did the math of when my fiance started talking about credit and wanted to have that conversation with her. Her sister was 13 years old at the time. So a 13-year-old isn't thinking about credit. And then we move forward to talk about, hey, the idea of a 20-year-old, thinking about retirement is not realistic when they're trying to think of how do I get my first car? How do I get how do I get my first job? How do I get my first apartment? Things of that nature. They're not thinking about, when I'm 62 or 65 to have enough money. So how do we introduce the idea to someone in their early 20s, but not make it so crazy far out?
Right. You can't make it crazy far out, and you can't look at somebody and say, you're going to die.
Yeah.
That's like the end of the conversation right there. So what we have to do is make it a reasonable gain. Something that they can look at and say, you know what, this really is worth my while. It isn't that much of my income. And kind of do a comparison of, if you start now, $500 a month doesn't sound like much. Well, maybe if you're a student, it's a lot. But over 30, 35, 40 years, compound interest, you can actually have a good amount set aside. And as your earnings increase, you increase how much you save. But the point is to get started, even if it's $5 a week.
Is it in a bank account? Is it like you just stash it in a checking account, and then is it a different type of account? Where do you put it?
No, you don't put it in a savings account or a checking account. Banks are really good. They will pay you 1% for holding on to your money so that they can loan it to somebody else at 20. So that's not the best place to put it. There are indexed funds that my company works with, and we can get people into funds that earn 7 or 8%. That's as much as I can actually say. Sometimes we get more, but I can't say that. So I didn't say that. But it helps to have that indexed fund. An indexed fund is really cool because when the stock market goes up, the fund goes up.
Yeah.
But when the stock market does a high dive off the high board, the fund doesn't because it's indexed. It's got a floor under it. So it's guaranteed that it won't lose value.
But it's backed by the stock market.
It is not backed by the stock market. It parallels the stock market.
I see.
The money is into things that don't lose value, like bridges and buildings, those kinds of things.
Gotcha. Who's managing these index funds?
That's a very long list of people. They're all managed by different groups.
So is it like one index fund, or is it there's a large group?
There's a large number of them. The Standard & Poor's 500 is the golden standard of returns.
Yeah.
And there's like 4,200 different funds, but every year there are only 4 of them that beat the Standard & Poor's. But it's never the same 4.
Gotcha.
So you get stuff that parallels that.
Should you diversify your money in different index funds?
You can do that.
Okay.
You can do that, yeah.
And they all have the floor. They all have a floor.
Yes. Now, each company has a slightly different rule.
Okay.
Some of them have a bonus so that there's no cap on it. Others have a cap, but they all have a floor.
What got you involved in this world, in the financial world?
What got me involved was a friend told me about an opportunity. And, I was in Africa for 38 years, and I know what poverty is. I lived among it. I had a very good friend who worked hard. He was a young father, had 3 kids, and I wanted to know how much money he made as a subsistence farmer. He did a cotton crop every year. We sat down and calculated what he got for the sale of his entire crop, and then we subtracted all of the debt that he'd accumulated with the cotton company, with the guy who owned the ox and the plow that he needed to use. All of that. When we took away all of that, got down to his net income for the year, it was $90.
His net income for the year was $90.
Yeah.
What was his revenue? You remember?
No, I don't remember the gross.
Was it 5 figures?
Well, it would have been 5 figures, but I didn't calculate it into dollars.
Okay.
So in his currency, yes, it was 5 figures, but
Okay, gotcha.
there's a lot of differences, like 250 of them to $1.
To $1 US. So but it came down to $90 US.
Right. $90 US for
Oh
a year.
Gosh.
And out of that, he had to buy medicine when anybody was sick, clothes for his kids.
Out of the $90.
Yeah.
That's impressive, like how one can live in such a way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and all of his neighbors were the same way.
Gotcha, okay.
And, you know, I looked at that and I thought, okay, what can I help him with so that he can get ahead? And I realized there's nothing I can help him with, because if he gets ahead of his neighbors, he will be ostracized in that community. It's a very collective community. They say, I am who I am because we are who we are. So you mean nothing unless you're a member of the group.
And you can't financially have so much gain unless other people have the same financial gain.
That's right.
Otherwise, you'll be terminated from the relationships.
Right.
Got it.
Yeah.
Potentially killed?
That does happen, yes.
Man, it's so the idea of progression, you know, in the financial world, you know, I think the same idea takes place in certain environments in the United States as well, where if you live in an impoverished area, once you start making financial strides up, you know, other people in the hood see that, and then now you become a target of, you know, ransoms and so forth.
Right.
And so that's really scary, man, to hear and see.
Yeah, and it does happen. I know of a girl who was the top student in her high school and won a weekend of sports competitions. She beat all the boys in the 100-yard dash. And then there was a bicycle race, and she came in first on that. And Monday she was dead.
So how did the financial world, how did you get into it? Like so I understand that story, but what inspired that, like what was next after that? So now you got to the point, you had to understand that this dude made $90 a whole year. And then what happens next?
Well, I was introduced to this company with the idea of helping people maximize their ability to earn money.
Okay.
And so I was with that company for a few years, and now I'm with a different company, and it's a better platform to help people.
So what specifically do you do to help people with their money?
Well, I sit down and talk to them, first of all, about how much do you have? Actually, that's not the first question I ask. The first question I ask is, how do you want your retirement to look? Because until I know that, anything I say is guesswork.
So you kind of like reverse, you kind of have the vision and then you reverse engineer.
Right. Where do you want to be? Okay, now we know where you want to be. Let's walk backwards from that to where you are.
Okay.
And then we'll see the steps you need to take in order to get there.
Gotcha.
When we do that, it's much easier for the client to see, yeah, I can do that. Because if you're earning minimum wage and you want to have a comfortable retirement, that's a huge leap. To think, yeah, I need to have $1 million after I retire? There's no way I can make that much money.
Yeah. That's especially if like saying, so that would be from 50 for the person who starts at 50, and then 65 is a retire age.
Right.
So you got to have $1 million stored in 15 years.
Yeah, and you can't do that.
So what would the math, I don't even have my phone on me, but I'm curious what the math would be. So that's 100 grand. So that's probably like 75 grand a year that you just got to push into your bank account.
That's right.
A year. So that's a good, that's a good like 6 grand a month that you just got to be able to stash every single month, not touch it in the course of 15 years. Emergencies, challenges, put 6 grand in this bank account and not touch. So you would really have to live on like 12 grand, have to make like 12 grand in order to live. Ideally, if you're going to put 50% into savings.
That's right.
So can someone do that as a W-2 in the first place? Like
No.
No, so it's not
No.
possible.
It is not possible. And that brings me to something about advertising. If you watch television
Yeah.
and you see the advertisements for all of the major houses for retirement and save your money here and all of the funds, and I'm not going to use any brand names. But you look at that commercial, what is the age of the person that walks in the door with a big smile on his face? The customer is always over 50.
Of the investment funds?
Yeah. So when I look at that, that tells me you have to be successful by 50 in order to walk in that door. There's no reason for somebody 25 to look at that commercial and think that applies to me, because he's looking at somebody old enough to be his father.
Yeah.
What is it that happens for that guy between 25 and 50 that he's got enough money to walk in? I don't know. It's best to start at 25 and begin saving whatever you can afford to save, starting at 25.
Even if it's $100?
Even if it's $100.
So this is what you do. You help people set up themselves properly for their retirement.
Right. Yeah, we look at where do you want to go with your retirement.
Okay.
Do you want to live on Ibiza? Do you want to live in Compton? Where do you want to live?
Yeah. That's a different parallel.
Yeah. So this is what we do. We'll work backwards from that. Now you're 25. You need to have some kind of savings, and you need to have emergency funds so that you don't have to dip into your savings when something happens. It's never if, it's always when. Something always happens.
So as we wrap up, what are some things that you would share with that 20 or 30-year-old and let them know now, so that way they can prepare for the future?
Yeah, I would say, look at your parents. What kind of retirement do you see your parents moving into? Or maybe they're already into it. Is that what you want? If it is, do what they did. If it isn't,
do something different.
Do something different. And don't ask your cousin what to do, because he's broke too. Find somebody who has resources, that doesn't have skin in your game, but will be a trustworthy, valuable resource to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
To tell you, doing what you're doing is going to make you really poor when you're older. So if you want that, that's fine. Stay, do what you're doing. If you don't, change what you're doing.
Powerful.
So we've got some contacts, some places that we can help people get set up with funds that will grow.
How can people reach out to you who's in a position where they're saying, hey, look, I don't have a crazy amount, or I have a large amount, whichever in between? How can they reach out to you? How can they get into contact with you so that you can tell them where to place their money?
Right. My business number is 714-353-9309.
So be sure to reach out to Richard and get on a phone call with him and put a strategy and a game plan for you, so that way your money can grow over time, and by the time you reach 50 or 60, that you're prepared. It's the people who prepare early who end up getting to that point or stage in life where they're successful and they're looking at the other people, and those people are working at McDonald's and Walmart. Is there anything else you want to share with us, Richard, as we end?
I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to be able to discuss with you what I'm doing and share with your viewers. The opportunity is there. Do you dare do something outside the box in order to get it?
Awesome. Be sure to reach out to Richard. One more time, your phone number?
714-353-9309.
Richard, thanks so much for being on the episode.
My pleasure, Andy. Thank you very much.
Be sure to reach out to this guy.
Tune in every week to discover new stories, new businesses, and new ideas.